The event this evening is going to be slightly different to the ones we've had recently. These guys are giving up their valuable time for you just to ask as many questions on anything and everything that you want to know about getting into the creative industry. So I've got a whole load of questions because I'm a massive nerd and I love to hear how people run their creative agencies and things like that. But this whole opportunity is set up just for you to ask questions. So I'm going to pass you over now to Kathryn just to give a bit of an intro as to who she is and who the team is and how they run. And then basically we're handing the floor over to you just to fire off as many questions as you like. So if you have a question, stick it in the chat and we'll get through them all this evening, I'm sure. So I'll pass over to Kathryn then.
Hello, hi everyone. So as Stan kindly said, I'm Kathryn Strachan. I'm Managing Director and owner of Copy House. So Copy House is an Edinburgh-based content marketing agency. We specialize in technology and fintech content. We've got a team of 7. So, I'm quite familiar with the recruitment process and, what employers look for when they're screening candidates. I've also asked our copywriter, Stuart Cameron, to join us today because he can kind of give some insights from the other side of the table. So Stuart, when he applied for the role at Copy House, he beat out over 200 people to get the role at Copy House, and he did a really impressive job. He spent 3 days on he wasn't supposed to, but he spent 3 days on our writing sample to get the job. So, I thought it'd be really valuable for you to also hear some of the really great insights that Stuart has about how do you stand out against the competition? How do you beat 200 people for, a relatively entry-level job and, really stand out from the crowd so that you can make that impact and you can get an interview. I remember actually when Stuart came to the interview, he's been with us for about a year, but I remember when he came to the interview and he was the only candidate who printed out samples of his past writing for me, which was like really super appreciative. So it's even like that small attention to detail. So basically what I wanted to do today was to answer any questions you have about applying for a creative role. I can answer questions and so can Stuart, and hopefully that helps you for when you go to apply for these roles. So I'm hoping that you get some really great insights from today and it makes you a stronger candidate for future roles.
We also we have Jess here as well. Kathryn, Jess is in the.
Fantastic! I didn't see her. So we also have Jessica Persons, who is another one of our copywriters. So Stuart and Jess applied at the same time. So they both beat out 200 people, and they had very different approaches for doing that. So I remember actually when Jess emailed me, and at the time I was looking to add a copywriter we only had one copywriter on the team. So she emailed me and said, I think I might be the next Angus Rogers, who is our copywriter, who had been our copywriter at the time. So, she had the forefront to think about what I was looking for and what I needed and to read between the lines and to call that out so that she stuck out immediately. Her CV also, I found it the other day in an old locker, and her CV had a little bit of color and a little bit of design to it, which is another really great way that you can kind of stick out because that color really pops off the page. So, not only was it her great experience, but these attentions to details, this forefront, this thinking about what the potential employer wants, that helps get your foot in the door. So Jess will also help answer any questions that you have about what it's like to stand out from the crowd and how you actually go about doing it, and some of the creative ways that both Jess and Stuart use to get my attention and then become a valuable member of Copy House.
That's a brilliant intro and a really good insight, and I'm sure you guys love having Kathryn share times when you've been a student and you've put yourself forward, but ultimately successfully. So it's a really incredible stories to hear. So we'd like to pass the floor over to everyone else. Whoever's got a question, please feel free to put up your hand or put the question in the chat window. But I'd like to kick off with one question from me, if that's okay. So I'm a bit of a nerd about technology and things like that, and I noticed on your website that you're obviously a fintech kind of content producing agency. In terms of blockchain and other cryptocurrencies like that, what is the biggest challenge you found in terms of communicating that with clients and other emerging technologies?
Stuart, do you want to take it, since you write on these things quite a lot?
Sure, yeah. So Kathryn, actually, she mentioned that there was like a writing sample she asked us to do before we even got the job. And she basically challenged us to write just a 500-word article on what blockchain is. And I think initially, right off the bat, I think the purpose of that exercise, I mean, I wasn't familiar with blockchain really. You know, I'd heard about it, and a lot of like deep tech and emerging tech is quite similar. You know, we're not necessarily industry experts, but we are writing experts. And I think when it comes to tackling something like blockchain, it's the first step is like not to get intimidated by it. I think everything is to some extent like learnable. You don't have to become an expert to be able to write on it necessarily. It's important to like learn and know about it. But yeah, just to like answer the question, I think it's about making traditionally complicated or complex topics accessible for everybody, and that's kind of one of like the core of our service. Is our clients are. We always use the phrase, they're too close to the woods to see the tree, or too close to the trees to see the woods, whichever way that phrase goes, which is essentially, they know what they do, they know how they do it, they know how it works, but their customer, their client doesn't necessarily. So it's our job to make it almost accessible, understandable, and put it into as easy to digest terms as possible. So that's kind of where that stems from.
Yeah, brilliant. That's excellent. Thank you very much. We've had a few questions come in from some people here. So the first one is from Hannah, who said she's looking to apply for a copy role. The job position description is creative and clever. Would you make your email creative and clever, or keep it simple? Is it better to be bold or play it safe?
So I'll answer, and then I'll hand over to Jess, because Jess's first email to me was really great, actually. So, I mean, from an employer's point of view, like, it is good to stand out from the crowd because you get a lot. So, you know, as an employer, if you're not using a recruiter, you're screening 200 plus applications. So if it's just quite standard, you know, it's not really going to stand out. But I would also keep it short, because most employers don't have a lot of time. So, you know, they're quite stretched. And a lot of research actually into email marketing shows that 60 to 70 words is the most effective word length for an email outreach, which is essentially what this is. But yeah, I'll let Jess answer as well, because her first email to me was really great.
Yeah, basically, so what I did with my email that I sent to Kathryn was I took a look at the style that she'd used. And so that's what I would recommend in terms of emails as well. Take a look at how the employer is wording their emails. If it's quite formal and quite bit more towards the formal side, then you might not want to throw in some emojis and go crazy with that. But on the other hand, if they're using it, then I would say you're free to use it as well. So try to mirror their style, but also add your personality to it, because you are selling yourself. So what I basically did was that Kathryn had sent a link to Angus Rogers so we could check him out and see who he was. And it was like, okay, so that's clearly what she's looking for. So I decided to be bold and say, I think I could be the next Angus Rogers. And it was kind of like, well, we'll see if that carries. And I mean, it did. So I would definitely recommend to be a bit bold, but just don't overdo it, maybe.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's good advice, Jess.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so our next question is from Ellie, and she said, and this is probably a good question that actually applies to many different types of creative industry. Are there any instant red flags that you watch out for in people's CVs and applications?
Yeah, definitely. So typos are a big one. Another one is sometimes at like the top of a CV, people will have a little snippet. But if that little snippet isn't relevant to the role, then it like stands out as a massive red flag. So for example, I'm hiring for a senior B2B copywriter at the moment, and I got a CV last week that said, I really want to be a copywriter at a law firm. It was better worded than that, but it was basically something along the lines of, I really want to be a copywriter at a law firm. And I saw that, I was like, well, we're not a law firm. So that's completely irrelevant to us. So if you're, I mean, obviously it's a lot of work to tailor a CV for every single job application, but at least make sure that like you're not saying something to someone that is completely irrelevant to them. So, you know, in this case, we're not a law firm. So to send us a CV that says, I really want to work at a law firm is, you know, a big red flag. As an employer, I think, you know, even if I did hire this person, even if they do have great experience, when they get a job at a law firm, they're going to leave. So, you know, I don't even consider that application. I just put it to the side and don't even have a follow-up call. So if you're putting together a CV or an application and you're not tailoring it for every role, which is understandable, at least make sure it doesn't have things in it like that.
Excellent. That does sound a bit like a terrible copy and paste faux pas, doesn't it? Okay, thank you. So next question from Ella. How would you recommend building your freelance portfolio of copywriting before applying to an agency?
Well, this is a great question for Stuart, because Stuart had built a portfolio as a freelancer before joining Coffee House.
Yeah, so just like as a little bit of context, I came out of uni. I did history at uni, and there are no obvious. I don't know if anybody else here was a history student, but you'll know that obviously it's like a great course that teaches you how to write, you know, critical thinking, all that. But there was no immediate job prospect that became apparent as soon as I graduated. So I actually came around to copywriting kind of by accident. Like I think I'd maybe thought about freelance writing at some point, but never really knew what that would look like. So when it came to like building a portfolio, I think it's so easy initially to get overwhelmed. There's so much to learn, so much to do, so much needed. But I think it's important, you know, to step back, take a bit of perspective, and try and learn things in like bite-sized chunks. So I think my first piece of advice would be to practice writing, you know, read other blogs, read other articles, and maybe in a sense, like challenge yourself to just try and replicate it. So say, I remember when I first started out, I didn't really understand what a copywriting brief was or what a good one looked like. So I almost in a kind of two birds, one stone kind of situation to both teach myself what a good brief looked like, but also to write another article. I imagined writing as if I was writing for another copywriter or for another freelancer to show them what a good brief looked like. So basically, I think it ended up being like 1,000 words or something, just on, you know, all of the tips and tricks of a great copywriting brief. But you can take any topic, and I think that way you can expand your portfolio for you. But I think then the second bit of advice I'd be is to I think like search like far and wide. You know, I definitely wouldn't advocate content mills or anything like that. I find them pretty exploitative, but like maybe look out, you know, family, friends, anyone in the network initially. I would also say reach out to other freelancers. That was like a massive thing for me. Like weekly Twitter chats and even LinkedIn are like a great place to find other freelancers who you can, you know, both befriend and like learn from. I know for me, that was like a massive way to get leads for like clients, you know, people passing work on. You know, some freelancers have a lot to do, and that's like a great confidence builder as well. So I'd say that's like probably the way I built a portfolio. It's not the way to build it, but it's certainly that worked for me.
Yeah, and Jess, before Jess came to us, she worked in-house at a technology company, but, you know, Jess also had a portfolio, but went about it in a very different way from Stuart, because Stuart had been a freelancer and Jess was coming from an in-house role. So yeah, maybe Jess, you can share some of your experiences with building a portfolio.
Yeah, so basically I tried to, when I was building my portfolio, I think especially if you don't really know what you're going for as a copywriter, it's good to have a mix of content, different kinds of topics. So I had my technology articles from the company that I used to work for, but then I would also create ones for myself. Like I just different ones to just kind of expand and have something in there for everyone. So I wrote about everyday, I wrote about lifestyle things, and I wrote about like movie reviews. I wrote a bit of everything, and just tried to add, whenever I had some free time, I tried to add some extra work to my portfolio as well, just to add a bit of diversity to it.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. Those are really, really great answers. So our next question is, how can you stand out? So Hannah Sloan's asked this, how can you stand out when a lot of feedback is you've got a great portfolio, but not enough experience, where roles are looking specifically for years of experience when maybe you've only got like a few months of placements. And this is something that is a bit of a bugbear of mine as well. And it kind of seems like a bit of a vicious cycle where, you know, people are looking for experience, but you can't get the job because you don't have the experience, but then they're looking for the experience. It just goes around in circles. So how can you make yourself stand out and land a role like that when actually you don't have the experience, but maybe you have a really great portfolio and you just need that first person to take a chance on you?
I mean, I would say building experience through volunteer roles or through your own projects. So, you know, when I look at a CV, I'm not really considering, you know, whether it's volunteer, paid, or part-time or full-time. I'm just looking at, okay, where did they work? What did they do? What was their experience? So, you know, going for part-time roles as well isn't a bad idea. Part-time roles often have less competition because not everybody wants to work part-time, or doing volunteer for perhaps a charity that you like and, you know, enjoy and, you know, will make a positive benefit towards, or, you know, having your own project. And at least that way you have it ticking over in the background. Trading is also a really great way. So the SEO course that I'm offering to you guys will definitely help. Both Jess and Stuart did that course. And actually, Jess, when I hired Stuart, we were only hiring for one role. But I opened up that course to everyone everyone who had been shortlisted for that role. So there was like 7 or 8 of them. And, you know, Jess took advantage of that opportunity. So it wasn't a paid opportunity. It was just a chance to learn and to expand their knowledge. And I saw a lot of potential in Jess and, you know, built a good relationship with her through doing that. So before she had even become a part of Coffee House, I had identified her as somebody who I wanted to be part of my team. So, you know, even building those relationships and those networks and those connections, I mean, I still think that networking is incredibly powerful. So, I mean, I personally have a goal of trying to meet 50 new people a month, and building that network is a really good way to get your foot in the door, because quite often it's not what you know, it's who you know. So, you know, with this question, you know, people are only looking at your past experiences, but if you already know somebody, it makes it a lot easier. So they go, oh, okay, I've got an entry-level position. Oh, I just met so-and-so last week. Oh, they'd be perfect for it. Let's go with them. And maybe they don't even recruit or advertise for that role because they've already met you. So I remember when I first started my copywriting, like I was a freelance copywriter, and the freelance copywriting business grew into Coffee House, and that's how I got to where we are today as a 7-person team. I did a lot of networking then, and a lot of meetings, and a lot of coffees, and those meetings and those coffees opened opportunities or gave me a chance to learn about something. So they'd recommend a book, or they'd recommend a website, or they'd recommend that I speak to X, Y, and Z. And, you know, before I knew it, it just kind of started the snowball. And it's still something that I use today as part of our new business opportunities. I do a lot of networking, and, you know, connections, and building that network is incredibly powerful. And I don't think you should underestimate it. Also being really active on LinkedIn. So, you know, posting and sharing that you have thoughts. So right now, when I'm recruiting for the senior copywriter position, I'm using LinkedIn to find candidates. So I'm actively looking on LinkedIn for people who might be relevant for that role, and then reaching out to them. So, you know, having a LinkedIn profile is a great way to go about it as well. Yeah, that's a lot of information, but
I think I would like add on to that as well. It's like when it comes to like it's like easy, I think, to like get intimidated by something that maybe says like 2 years experience or 1 year experience or anything like that. But I think it's maybe you can also look back in any sort of creative field, you know, you didn't start where you think necessarily you started. If you look back, you can find relevant experience that you can, you know, flesh out and add to your portfolio or to your CV. And I think it's important, like, not to ignore, you know, if it's valuable to an employer, a potential employer, and you can justify it, I think then it's, you know, it's open season. Like, go for it, add it to your CV, add it to your portfolio.
That's really great. Thank you. That was really valuable answers. The next question was from Matt Keane, but that was kind of a similar question, really, about how would you go about applying for roles that need 2 years minimum of experience. So I hope, Matt, that answered your question as well. So the next question we have from Ella is, how do you view the rise in popularity of creative CVs? And this is something you mentioned a little bit before, Kathryn, about people who've put a bit of time into their CV in terms of design and things like that. Do you take them less seriously, or do you appreciate the time and effort that goes into them?
I guess it depends on what we're talking about in terms of creative CV. So I think a little bit of design, a little touch of color, you know, goes a really long way in helping you stand out. So I remember Jess had, you know, just a pink line under her name. Account manager that I hired had like a photo of herself and, you know, some skill ratings that were designed. So I think a little bit of design goes a long way. And I think if the creative was in line with, you know, the position or the company. So, I mean, if you're applying for video, a role at a video agency, creating your own video as a cover letter might be a really great idea. So I think it depends, back to Jess's point earlier, I think it depends on where you're applying and matching that with, you know, what they might be looking for.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, that's very interesting. So this next question is kind of related, actually, from Heather. What would instantly draw you to an application or CV? Is there an advantage to approaching an employer through a physical format, i.e. like a package in the post, or rather than email? Do you have a preference?
Well, I mean, I think you have to be careful with like how you do it. So package in the post. I mean, I'm hiring now, but I'm actually in Ecuador, which is where the background noise is coming from. So if you sent me a package in the post, I would not get it. So, I mean, I think it's about thinking about it smartly. What to me is more important is that somebody who understands the role, who understands what I'm looking for and matches that. Because like, I don't care really if somebody sends it to me in the post or sends it to me in email, but if their CV is exactly what I'm looking for, then I want to talk to them. So if you really want a role, it is worth, you know, tailoring your application and your CV to match that role, to make sure that, you know, what they're asking for in the job description, you're hitting every single point of that. So, you know, it's easy to just send out one CV for all job applications, but if there's one that you really want, that you're like, oh man, that would be my dream job, if I could get that job, I would give anything, take the time to create a CV that is aligned to it. So every single point is something that they're asking you for, and that's going to help you stand out more than anything, because very few people actually do that. Very few people actually take the time and the effort, because it is a lot of effort to tailor-made CVs for an application. Most people don't take that time. So if you do, you're instantly going to stand out. I would also, you know, look and see who you know. And if anybody you know knows somebody within that company, because a referral, a word of mouth, as like most agency owners know, like is a really great way to get your foot in the door at an organization and to close a deal. And it works the same with job applications, because like if Stuart or Jess or Cuba or Stephen or anybody in our team came to me and said, oh, hey, like this person I know is looking for a role, you know, I would talk to them before I even saw their CV, because I trust my team. So, you know, finding that connection, finding that way in is really valuable as well.
Brilliant. That was excellent. Thank you. So next question from Amber is, are there any buzzwords you would recommend you should include in the application? And I would just like to add, are there any words that you would say you should definitely avoid in an application?
I guess it's a similar question, because buzzwords are only appropriate for like if they're asking for a certain thing in the job application. So say they're asking for SEO, then you're going to want to mention SEO in your CV. But, you know, I wouldn't cram it full of buzzwords. You know, I would try to, as Jeff said, I would try to align the language with the language that they're using. And, you know, because it's going to change. If you're applying to a corporate law firm, they want a very formal, very stiff CV, right? They want something that's very traditional. If you're applying for an innovative, creative agency run by millennials that is really into culture, I mean, you would probably definitely use slang. So I think it really depends. The words and language you use, like good copywriting, depends on who you're talking to.
I would probably just add to that, which I think, I mean, which I would think applies to every single application, though, is maybe don't use swear words. That would be like one thing to avoid. Just don't use that.
Excellent.
Also, I think maybe if there's a specific company or a creative agency or something you're applying to, make sure to read the hell out of their website. That's always a good way to get a feel for a company. You know, get a feel for their culture, whether not only will you be a fit for them, but will they be a fit for you. And I think from there, once you have like a good idea of who you're applying to, it almost like things start to fall into place when it comes to writing a CV, because you kind of, you know, the other person on the other side and maybe what their expectations are. So it's less about, like we've said, cramming full of buzzwords, and more about tailoring it to the person that will read it and at the end.
Excellent, thank you. And no swear words. Cool. So next question then from Mirren. Would you recommend streamlining your CV to just relevant roles to the role you're applying for, or would you put everything on there?
I think it probably depends. I'd probably do a bit of both. So, I mean, when I was looking for roles, I would probably make a scoring system in my head. So I would know the ones that I really, really, really wanted, that were like my top 10. And I would make sure that those were streamlined, that those were tailored. And then, you know, the other ones that I'm just kind of applying for, hoping, maybe interested, not really that serious, I would probably just like submit a blank, not a blank, but like a standard CV for, you know, and those roles could surprise you. They could be, you know, the job that you absolutely love. But yeah, I mean, I think it's probably up to you and how much time you have available and how much you actually want the role, whether or not you put the effort into it to streamline the application. I don't know. Stuart and Jess, what do you think?
I think I would always argue to streamline a CV. I think, you know, as Kathryn said, like in this, the pool that I applied, that both me and Jess applied in, you know, there was 200 candidates, which means there was 200 potential CVs. I would always argue keeping it as concise and as relevant as possible. You know, I think, not to sound harsh, but I think an employer at the end of the day, they don't, maybe, you know, you got a horse riding medal when you were 15 or whatever, and that might be great, but I don't think if it's for a creative, you know, agency role, it's worth having that type of stuff on. I think like Kathryn's scoring system is probably like a good idea, you know, just like question everything on your CV so that it's all justified, you know, as I just, as I would say, if the experience there, or the past project you did, or something, an internship or something, if you can make it relevant to the person hiring you and show the transferable skills, or show why they should care about that experience and why they'll benefit from like employing you, then that would be, I think, best.
Yeah, I think Stuart gave the perfect answer there. I have nothing to add.
Excellent. Okay, so this question, the next one from Alicia, is kind of similar. It kind of leads on from that. So what's the first thing you look for on a CV? Would it be your degree, skills, or experience?
Actually, quite interestingly, when you get a bit more senior in the industry, your degree doesn't even matter. So our project manager doesn't have a degree, and I didn't know that for like 6 months. So I saw his CV, I interviewed a bunch of people, he was the best candidate, he had a lot of really great experience, and he doesn't have a degree. And I didn't know that until me and him and Stuart were all sitting in a pub and he mentioned that he didn't go to university. I was like, really? What? So, you know, when you first leave school, you think that your degree is like super important. I mean, I certainly did. I have 2 degrees. So I have an MA and a BA in modern literature. So I really thought that my degree was super important. And it did teach me a lot of really great skills. But when you get a bit more senior, so when you have some experience under your belt, your degree doesn't even matter anymore. So when I look at a CV, you know, I am looking for experience, because by the time I put a role online, I normally know what I'm looking for. So it's not necessarily like years of experience. It's okay, do they have experience writing on technology? So, you know, when I was looking at Stuart's and Jess's CVs, one of the things that I was looking for was, have they written on technical subjects? Immediately discarded people who had like only done health and beauty, because it's so far away from technology, it's never going to work. You know, and then looking at soft skills too. So when I hire somebody, like, we do a personality assessment, because it's about those soft skills as well as it is about, you know, the experience, because we need to make sure that they're cultural fit, but that also they can deliver to whatever the role requires. So it's kind of a combination of both.
Excellent, thank you. Just to add to that, I mean, I've applied for various different jobs and had different interviews and things. I've never had anyone ever look at any of my degree stuff, ever. No one ever really did.
I have 2. I thought they were really important. I did an MA from UCL after I graduated with my BA, because I thought they were that important. And they are. I mean, it taught me how to write about technical subjects, and it's one of the reasons why Coffee House now specializes in technology, because I started writing about Complex Series of Time and Alice in Wonderland during my MA, and that naturally evolved and influenced the shape of my career. And it's a good way to show that you're committed, that you're dedicated, to show all these things. But after a while, I'd say after like 2 or 3 years in the industry, it does not matter.
Amazing. A lot of lecturers and stuff probably, you know, really not liking the answer to that one. So where are we now? So we've got a question now from Ellie. You mentioned using your own projects as building experience. How would you quantify these projects as opposed to working in studios or other agencies versus your own projects?
Yeah, I think it is maybe mentioned that.
Yeah,
so like thinking back, I think almost like we were just talking about the university degree as almost like a stepping stone. I think doing your own projects is kind of like a similar thing. I'm more than certain I didn't put any of my own stuff on my CV, but maybe in terms of opening the door to other opportunities, if you're looking to start out freelancing or even volunteering or something creatively, these types of things are like valuable, you know, to not only flesh out your portfolio, but to show that you can actually do what you say you can do. Plus, I think as well, like using your own projects, I think it demonstrates that that you are motivated to do what you want to do. I think, like it's kind of a snowball, that in the sense that, you know, you maybe do you go from one opportunity to another, and that almost flashes things out. It's that initial foot in the door. I would argue that your own projects do build your own experience if you do it properly. I would also say that goes hand in hand with networking. You know, make friends with people. You know, if you're interested in freelancing as opposed to going in-house, I'd strongly say fellow freelancers are your friends. Like, it might seem, oh, there's so much competition out there, but it's so much easier to do, you know, to be successful and you know, learn and grow when you're seeking friendships and, you know, supporting opportunities to build on each other rather than seeing everybody as direct competition. I hope that answers it, but please let me know.
I mean, and you can add your personal project to your CV, especially if you achieve things with it. So, you know, I've seen on CVs, a blog, and then, you know, they might have, oh, I attracted X amount of traffic, or I ranked on page 1 for this keyword, because that shows that your skills in writing content that is going to be engaging, that's going to rank for SEO. So you can put it on your CV the same way that you would put, you know, a job experience if you're looking to build out your CV in greater detail as well. And then, you know, for copywriting roles, they'll ask you for work samples almost always. So, I mean, if you wrote a really great piece for your own article, you know, you can submit that as well. It doesn't not count just because it was for your own blog. If you think it's, you know, the best representation of your work, yeah, definitely go ahead and use it. I know that Jess had her own project before starting at Coffee House, so maybe Jess can tell you a bit more about how she used that to open some doors for her.
Yeah, so I mainly, when I did my own project, I felt like I did it just to, like I said before, to just add some diversity, but something that I wish I would have done, which would have, I'm very happy where I ended up at Coffee House, but I have spent quite a few years stumbling around, and I should have, what I would recommend as well is to read as much as you can, and also just anything you can to just learn the work that you want to do, not just networking, but reading books, and if you can find any courses, do that as well. Because I found myself, I wrote a lot of articles, but I didn't know anything about SEO. So a lot of looking back, a lot of my articles weren't usable. So make sure you just learn as much as you can from all the sources you can use, really.
Brilliant. That's amazing. Thank you very much. So next question here from Kane. When people apply, do you contact the references that they put down? Are they worth putting on your CV?
Not at that stage. So, you know, when you're screening CVs, you're screening hundreds of them. So you're not going to call everybody who puts a reference on their CV. You do call references, but so how our recruitment process works, at least, is people submit an application, a CV. I screen it, I make a short list, I do a short phone screening, 15, 20 minutes. And then after that, I shortlist again, and that shortlist goes, gets asked to do a personality test and, you know, a copy test. And then we have a longer interview, which is an hour and a half, 20 minutes with the team, an hour with me, and then make a decision from there. Once I make the decision, then I contact references. So I don't contact references until like the very end, because I personally don't have time to call lots of people to like see about them. You know, and I normally like want to warn people before I call their references anyway. So, you know, by the time that you call references, you know, at that stage, you know, that you've been offered the job and that it's just pending references. And I know a lot of employers do that, you know, you get offered, but it's pending references. And then you ask, like, then your references are called, and then, you know, you go from there. So you don't necessarily need to put them on your CV.
Brilliant. Thank you. So this next question from Rob then is, how can you proactively look for a new position? Is it just a case of reaching out to agencies and hoping that they're looking for someone? Or do you find that agencies mostly put up jobs on jobs boards or their website or something? What's your experience in that?
Yeah, so we always advertise on LinkedIn and on our own job and on Indeed. So Stuart found us through Indeed. Jess emailed me directly. So, you know, it's worth looking at multiple places. It's also worth connecting with recruiters, especially recruiters that specialize in the creative space, because recruiters will constantly have roles. So an agency might only hire 4 or 5 people a year, but a creative recruiter is hiring people every single day or shortlisting people every single day to be hired. So it's worth building that network, you know, connecting with them, getting in front of them, having them look at your CV, having them meet you, and, you know, then they can hopefully connect you with opportunities that come available. So yeah, I mean, I think it's basically networking, and then, you know, keeping an eye on LinkedIn and being proactive as well. So a really great example is, you know, I often know that I'm going to be hiring for a role before I actually post about it. So if somebody was to contact me, you know, during those stages when I'm like, okay, I need to hire for this role, but I haven't gotten around to posting for it yet, and we're a good fit for it, then they would get their foot in the door before anybody else even did. They'd be ahead of the game. So I think, you know, if there's an agency that you really want to work for, you don't need to wait until, you know, until they're hiring for it. A lot of agencies have a ABR policy, which is always be recruiting. We're advised in agency world to always be recruiting, because agencies are built on people, and so you need to hire people, and need to hire people fast, because clients aren't going to wait for months and months and months for you to have the resources available. So you need to be able to hire people within a relatively short time frame, which means that you always kind of need to be recruiting, always need to be, you know, at least willing to talk to people, so that you have a bank of people you can call on when those roles become available. So I'd say be proactive. And if there's an agency you want to work for, email them your CV, see if they'll be up for a quick chat, talk to recruiters, and then obviously keep an eye on the normal places as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And just kind of related to that, you mentioned just then about networking, and obviously that being a good source of meeting people and hearing about jobs and things like that. And you mentioned earlier about you personally trying to meet 50 new people a month. How do you go about doing that in a way that's genuine and not just like spamming people on LinkedIn with messages and things like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, so I'm in a different position, obviously, because I'm networking to build the agency, to bring us in leads. I also have a full team, so I don't have to do, my role is sales, vision, and culture, so I can focus on our sales. I don't have to be thinking about clients or copy or any of this, because I have this brilliant team that does that for me. So with networking, I do a lot of networking through groups. So I'm part of Pimento. I'm part of Agencynomics, which is how I know Richard. So, you know, becoming part of groups. There are likewise freelance copywriting groups and copywriting groups in general. So the DMA is a really great one. The CMA is a really great one. And then there's things like Lunch Club, which is an AI-powered networking platform that matches you with people that are relevant to you. So I use that as well. And then I also build reciprocity. So once you start building a network, I then make intros. So, you know, I meet somebody and I say, okay, who can I intro you to? And then I intro them to somebody else I met the other week, and they're happy. And then they feel like they owe me a favor. So then they introduce me to other people who are relevant to me. And it just kind of creates a snowball effect. At Coffee House, we talk a lot about momentum and how you build and keep momentum. And, you know, doing things like that builds a momentum, so that, you know, now it's at the point where I don't even have to try to fill 50 meetings a month. And I generally like meeting people. So, you know, we have a good conversation, we have a chat, we find out more about each other's companies and how we can help each other. Agency owners in general are people who want to help each other. I mean, as you see with Richard, who's launched this amazing program, you know, and all the mentors, most of which are agency owners. Agency owners just, I don't know if it's like this in other industries, but we just want to help, really.
Yeah, I think that's a general good rule of thumb. People like helping people, don't they? Especially in the creative industries.
I would, sorry, to add on to that, I would definitely also maybe again, like when I was freelancing, I think flattery is often like quite a good tool, and you can be genuine with it. But if, say, you're a designer, and you maybe have been scouting around on Twitter or Facebook, or even if you've not been engaging directly, but I mean, the power of social media, you can reach these people directly, and, you know, even just saying, oh, like, I really loved that design you did, like, and then maybe almost like introducing yourself that way, you know, I'm quite new, whatever, you know, but this is my aspirations. Do you have any advice or anything? I think generally that people are nice and people will try and help. And while it might not lead to a job, that type of, you know, over time, doing that type of thing, it can honestly benefit you. And yeah, I'd say it benefits in the long term.
Yeah, I can add to that as well. That is something my brother actually did that. He works as a photographer now, but when he was just starting out, he just fired off a message to a massive photographer in LA and just told him they liked his stuff and asked if he could be an intern for him. And he got back and said, yeah, sure, come right over. So because everyone else he told him later on that everyone else that got in touch had just been talking about what, like, all they're trying to brag about themselves, whereas he was more like, I think you're awesome because of this, and that is why I want to learn from you. So he'd really like, so don't be afraid to contact whoever it is, no matter how big shot that person seems to be. Don't be afraid to just reach out, because you could, at the very least, you could get some advice or anything. Just don't be afraid to just reach out, really.
That's great advice. Thank you. So next question. So you've put in a load of time into crafting a CV, and you've thought long and hard, and it's tailored to the person you've applied for. Freddie has asked, after you've applied for the role, would you follow up with a CV after with a phone call after you sent in your CV?
Probably not a phone call, because almost no agencies are actually in an office at the moment. So we have a number on our website that goes to our marketing manager in a roundabout way. So most agency owners, best way to get a hold of them at the moment is actually via email. Because nobody's actually in the office. If they have a landline, you know, it could just ring, but everybody's checking and answering their emails. Most people get bombarded with LinkedIn outreach messages, so I tend to ignore LinkedIn outreach messages when it's from people they don't know. But most people reply to emails. So actually, I think the best way to probably follow up would be via email.
Brilliant, excellent. So next question from Kane is, if you have attempted to start a company like a digital agency, even if it's failed, would you put that on your CV as experience, or would you hold that information back?
Yeah, sure. Nobody needs to know that it failed. I mean, you could have sold it. Anything could have happened to it. Like, nope, you don't need to say like it totally tanked. I, you know, became bankrupt. And you might have learned some really great valuable lessons from it. You might have gotten some really good experience. You might have spent years dedicated to it. I mean, most agency owners eventually sell out. So, you know, you could sell, you know, could have run it for 5 years and then sold it. Or, you know, you could have run it for 5 years and could have run it into the ground. Or, you know, you could have run it for 3 years and then COVID hit. So, I mean, yeah, definitely. Our marketing manager, actually, she used to run a company. It was a language learning institution, and it was one of the things that stuck out to me. I don't actually know what happened to it because it was 5 or 6 years ago, so it didn't even come up in her interview, but it did stick out to me because it showed that she had entrepreneurial experience.
Excellent, amazing. Another quick question here from Kane is, any advice for interview prep? And I would follow this up with, if you're practicing to answer like questions for an interview, are there any common ones that you usually ask people when you're interviewing people?
Yeah, I mean, so I would definitely study the website. I definitely study the job spec, because they're likely to ask you questions for that. So if it says something like must have experience in organizing events, they're probably going to ask you, tell me about an event that you organized. So not only like think about questions that they might answer based on the job, but think of examples, because a lot of employers will ask for examples. So tell me about how you would handle a new technical subject, or tell me an example of a time that you had a problem at work and you solved it. So, you know, going through that job spec and thinking of examples for every point that they're asking for is a really great way. I'd also say don't over prepare. So, you know, I'm personally quite good at thinking on my feet, but, you know, you don't want to come across as like overly nervous during an interview. But yeah, I mean, I'll let Stuart and Jess answer as well, because they both obviously interviewed with me. I remember Stuart's actually, you were a little nervous, weren't you, Stuart?
Yeah, I was, but I think it's just the initial anticipation of an interview that I think that's where the kind of nerves come from. But I think my advice would be just like be yourself, as like corny or as cliche as it is. You know, you want to show your potential employer, you know, who you are. I think, and I would definitely echo what Kathryn's already said. In terms of preparing, make sure that you know as much as you can about the company that you're applying for. And when you are answering questions, you know, be harsh with yourself if you're practicing. And what I mean by that, when I say be harsh, is would the employer care about like what you're talking about? Again, so if Kathryn asked me, for example, you know, about writing experience, and I started talking about something completely irrelevant, you know, you have to constantly check yourself and ask, like, does this person care about what I'm saying? Or better yet, put it in a way that would explain why they should care about what you're saying.
Yeah, I get everything that Stuart and Kathryn have said, and I could like just a simple, but something that I studied a lot was different ways to help me answer the question. The simple question that you often get is just simple, tell me about yourself. You don't want to wander off talking about your family holidays when they're asking about that, even though that's something that maybe is important to your personality, but you need to tailor your answer around what you're going to bring to the role. Something else I would add as well is think about what you want from the role. So think about questions that you have about the company. What kind of company do you want to work for? What kind of culture do you want to have? And make sure you have questions to ask so you also know if the job is a good fit for you. Because I made a mistake with my last job. I didn't ask those questions, and then it turned out the culture wasn't a good fit for me. So definitely think about that. I think that's also going to help you relax a bit more during an interview as well, when you're coming into it thinking that you're also going to get something out of them. It's not just you giving them something.
Yeah, I'd also add that, like, for an entry-level role, one of the questions I always kind of ask is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? So when I was interviewing people for the role that Stuart and Jess got, somebody told me that they wanted to be a famous musician. So I was like, right, okay, so you're not a great fit for this role. Jess told me that she wanted to be the best copywriter she could possibly be. So I was like, yes, you're perfect for this role. Yeah, Stuart told me something similar as well. So, you know, they had a clear desire to want to be a copywriter, where people who were like, I want to be a famous musician. I was like, well, we don't do music here, so probably not a good fit.
You know if they went on to become a musician?
It was only a year ago, but I don't think so.
Excellent. Our next question is from a brand new graduate, Mr. Richard Coop. What is the single most important quality that candidates need to do to demonstrate to stand out from the crowd?
I think it's around values. So, you know, going off what Jess was saying too, you know, a cultural fit, especially in a small team, is so important. You know, I can teach the hard skills. I can teach you how to write content. I can teach you how to do SEO. But if you're not, you know, the same kind of person, if you're not super ambitious, if you're not, you know, creative, if you don't have the same values that the company has, then you're definitely not a good fit. So, you know, somebody who demonstrates our values to me is always going to be, you know, one above somebody who just checks all the right boxes. Hard skills are easier to teach than soft skills. I mean, soft skills are so ingrained in us that it's almost impossible to teach them.
Yeah, that's a very good answer. Yeah. So next one, and this one's from Hannah. As an employer, do you expect people to have achieved a lot over lockdown? Because, you know, I'm sure as in many of our cases, half of lockdown was just kind of surviving it and not going entirely crazy. That's definitely my experience. How do you feel about that?
I don't think that it's about how they've handled it more than what they've achieved. So, you know, when I'm talking to people now for roles that I'm recruiting, I'm asking them, you know, how did you handle it? Because actually what I want really resilient team members who aren't going to run for the hills at the first sign of trouble, because, you know, it's been a turbulent year for everybody. So I want a team that's going to pitch in, that's going to work together, that's all going to pull in the same direction to help Coffee House get through it, which is exactly what, like, our team has done. So, you know, when I'm asking about COVID, I'm not looking for a list of, well, I learned how to speak Spanish and I learned how to do watercolors. What I'm looking for is, you know, how did you survive it? Did you, you know, go into, I'm going to lock myself in a room and not come out for 3 months, because that's absolutely no help to me as an employer. Like, I need you to come out, I need you to work, I need you to, you know, pull together. Or, you know, are you going to say, well, you know, it was really hard, but I did X, Y, and Z to overcome that. You know, that means a whole lot more to me. Yeah, but I mean, I'm sure Richard can echo it, but like, I mean, COVID's been rough on everybody, even, and especially agency owners. Is even, in a way, it's even harder on agency owners, because, like, I don't really much care what happens to me, but I care a whole lot about what happens to my team. So, you know, we worked really hard to not furlough anybody, to not make anybody redundant, to keep everybody together. So much so that, you know, I didn't even pay myself for a couple months because I wanted to keep the team. So, you know, to me, to agency owners, you know, it's people that, you know, we really care about. We tend to care a whole lot about our people. So, you know, making sure that they have the right mindset so that they're not gonna, you know, ditch you at the first sign of trouble is pretty important, especially when you're willing to sacrifice pretty much everything to keep them in their jobs.
That's amazing. So next question then, how would you recommend ensuring that your initial application doesn't get thrown out by an automated computer even before it gets to a human reading it?
So I do think that that's a trend that, I mean, Richard might know more, but I do think that that's a trend that's kind of going out the window a little bit of automated screening. So most agency owners I know hire a recruiter, so the recruiter's human, but you know, making sure that you hit all the right points. So as we talked about earlier, going through the application and, you know, making sure that if it's talking about SEO or technology marketing, that, you know, if you have that, if you've done that, that it's on there, and basically, you know, just going through making sure that it's as tailored as possible and that it hits all the right boxes will make sure that you don't get thrown out by a computer. Though I do think that the recruitment industry is becoming more human. We've done some work in the recruitment space, even though it's not a specialty of ours, and it does seem to be getting more human. So I think, you know, big companies might still use automated screeners, but I think most, especially small to medium companies, have started to not go that way.
Yeah, good point. Okay, that's fantastic. So I think, as far as I can see, that's everybody's questions. Has anyone got anything else that they want to quickly fire at these guys before me and Richard start waffling on again? No, I mean, there's a couple of things that maybe that I kind of wanted to ask you guys. How, and this is kind of a question for all three of you, how did you get started in the creative industry, and what made you want to go into like a copy content creation type role?
Well, so it was a very long time ago for me now, and it feels like a lifetime ago. So let me see if I can remember. Basically what happened to me was I finished my MA in modern literature and was looking for a job. At the time, I actually thought I'd go into publishing. Well, first I thought I'd go into academia, which didn't happen because academia for humanities, there's no money available. So then I did try a publishing internship, discovered that I didn't really like it because it wasn't creative enough. And then I found a copywriting course and took the copywriting course and like absolutely loved it. So then I started, got an entry-level job at an agency, and I worked agency side for a while, and then I became a freelancer. And then from my freelance, it kind of grew and morphed into Coffee House, and has grown at lightning speed, despite everything. So yeah, that's kind of it. But I have a very hard time, like, it wasn't 10 years ago, but it feels like it was. But Jess and Stuart are obviously a lot closer to the start of their careers than I am. So they probably have a lot better insights into that.
Well, I mean, I actually started writing short stories when I was about 8 years old. So I've kind of always had the writing in me, and I wanted to be a journalist originally, but I also didn't like that because it didn't give me enough. I couldn't be creative enough with my writing. I kind of stumbled around for a bit. Not really. I knew I wanted to write, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to write. And then I did marketing in my last role, and then I came across the application for Copy House, and that's kind of when I realized, oh, copywriter, yes, that is what I want to do. So it's just kind of been, I've always had the writing thing, that's always what I wanted to do, but I didn't come to copywriter until just last year, really.
Amazing, that's excellent. Stuart's just dropped out and then dropped back in again.
Yeah.
Stuart, can you hear us and stuff?
Yep, I can hear you. Sorry about that.
Did you hear the original question?
No, I didn't.
So we were just asking you from the team, how did you come about a career in kind of copywriting initially? What made you choose that kind of role that you're in now?
I think for me, it kind of stemmed from like a place where I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was doing other jobs that weren't related to copywriting while I was interested in becoming a copywriter. So I think for me, it was just the more I found out about it, the more that I decided that's what I wanted to do. You know, I don't have a background in marketing, but I did. I mean, from school and from university, knew I enjoyed writing, knew I enjoyed learning, and copywriting is kind of both, especially a copy on tech companies as our clients. But that in itself is so broad that, in a way, I think you almost have to like to learn, because the job requires it. So I think initially, yeah, I think most people will say, where it comes to copywriting, or maybe even any creative field, that you do kind of like come into it a little bit by accident, but it was intentional. I knew I wanted to do that, and I wanted to write for a living, and this is just how it's like manifested. So
amazing. That's lovely. I mean, that's a really good question. I love to hear the answers that people provide from that. I wonder if we can just ask some of our own Winchester Creatives team that question as well. Dan, without putting you too much on the spot, Dan B, how did you decide to become a designer and work in the creative industry?
Well, I actually graduated as an illustrator, and so I was still kind of trying to find my feet, find my style, find my way of working, and I kind of moved into digital illustration, and yeah, it was through basically looking for experience. I just reached out to loads of people, reached out to my uncle who had a job that he needed doing that was a graphic design job. And it just kind of grew from there. And I think I realized that the things I found frustrating about illustration were things that I actually enjoyed about graphic design. So, you know, the element of control that you have working on a computer. And then that kind of went through workplaces until I ended up freelancing. But yeah, it wasn't my original plan. I had to kind of trial and error my way for a few years to work out what it was that I wanted to do.
Amazing, thank you. I mean, from my point of view, I think just even through school and college, I just really enjoyed like creativity and art and those different kind of courses. What really drew me to getting into design and the creative industry was the element of like problem solving, of someone bringing forward like a problem with their business or something and being able to solve that through some kind of visual communication or something other like that. And that's just kind of what addicted to me in the first kind of place. Richard, how about your route into the creative industry?
Hi everyone. My route was when I was about 14, I just knew exactly what I wanted to be. I didn't have any of that sort of black and white sort of feeling like I'm not sure what I want to do. I actually wanted to be a director, like a film director and a theatre director, and I chased that dream for a while. So I did a double degree, an English and a drama degree together. And I happened to spend some time with an actor called Benedict Cumberbatch, who's at my time at Manchester. And I got into the National Theatre Young Directors Scheme. So the top 10 young directing talent got chosen. I'd already done 3 tours to Edinburgh, toured a show to Brazil, picked up a number of awards, did something at the Battersea Arts Centre. So I started doing the rounds. I worked at the Young Vic, the Old Vic, the Almeida, the Gate, but I just couldn't string a kind of career out of it. It was a passion project. But what I learned from that is that I knew in my heart that I wanted to have a career in the creative industries. What I cared about was collaborating with a group of people to chase down the best possible idea. And it happened to coincide with something that happened with my mother. So my mother had a series of 2 major strokes, and she was comatose like for 4 months. She managed to survive that. She was given a 1% chance of survival rate, but she was never able to talk since. So she's still alive today, 22 years later, but she's been she dribbles a lot. She can't talk. She's in a wheelchair. She's fell through a tube. And she's been that way for 22 years. And so for me, what happened was this passion of collaborating with people became something fundamentally important to me, which is we all have a gift, and that gift is of communication. And you only realize how special that gift is when it's taken away from you. So I haven't had a conversation with my mother for 22 years. And you realize that when you realize the gift of communication, you don't want to squander it. So for me, all I wanted to do was to have a career in the creative industries that helped other people to communicate better, to be able to use, you know, some people and some businesses are really good at running their own businesses, but they're shockingly bad at telling their story. And I just found that I had a bit of a gift to explain that story, work out what it might be. So for me, I just did whatever it took to stay in the creative industries, but for me, my motivating drive is I want to unleash the potential of what this wonderful gift we have, which is of communication. So yeah, that summarizes how I got in. And I lucked out. I fell into the BBC. I was a tri-media producer, started working on things like the iPlayer, fell into digital. And my big break happened when my wife and I, we got married. We decided to do a trip of a lifetime. We drove a Land Rover from London to Cape Town, 25,000 miles for charity, came back, didn't know what I wanted to do. And I landed my first board level job in an agency with 130 people as their digital director. And when the guy tried to hire me, I said, look, I can't do this job. I haven't got the experience. And he looked me in the eye and said, if you can drive a Land Rover from London to Cape Town without any mechanical skills whatsoever, you'll work this job out. So I then had I've had a 20-year career in the creative industries by just really working really hard, grafting, but caring about what I was doing. But yeah, that's how I fell into it. If it's okay, I'm going to just start to wrap up because I'm conscious of time. Want to thank everyone for all of your questions, but I'm going to just leave you with a couple of practical points, if that's okay, and then we'll wrap up on time. The first thing I'd say is the one thing that I've learned in my career is the most powerful thing you can do is to build reciprocity. Kathryn mentioned this, okay, and to work on your mindset. There are two types of mindset you can choose to have. You can have an abundance mindset, which means that you believe there's opportunities for everyone and everyone can flourish and you can help as much as receive help. Or you can have a scarcity mindset where you think that there's a limited amount of resources, there's a small amount of opportunities, and you need to compete and be much better than anybody else and do whatever it can to win. And you win at the loss of somebody else. Now, what I'd really encourage you to do is to really embrace this abundancy mindset. And I'm going to just share a couple of things with you on the screen here. I can't. God, I can't. I don't think I can do that now. I need to open up my system preferences. Bear with me. So there's a guy called Adam Grant who wrote a book called Give and Take, and he believes that if you looked around this room, there'll be a percentage of people who are just in it to take. Right? They just give me the resource, give me the links, give me all of this stuff, and I'll figure it all out. But they very rarely give back. What they've seen statistically is the givers, the people who are prepared to help and support others, are the ones that actually thrive and succeed the most in their roles. So you may find that you kind of, you know, it feels counterintuitive, but just on this call, we've had 2 links being shared, which is If You Could and the Work in Startup links. We have an online community. I encourage you to just share this stuff, and you're not giving away stuff that's going to basically push, you know, make it worse for you. What you're doing is you're increasing your net worth with your network and your community. So whenever you see stuff that's useful, share it. So I've just shared with you the Lunch Club AI link, and just to explain to you what that is, it's like it's something that I've shared with all of my agency nomics leads. It's an algorithm that matches you with people that you want to meet. It's like a LinkedIn thing, but for meetings. and you just tell it how many meetings you want. So maybe you just want 2, 3, or 4, and you tell them that you're available on a Thursday and a Friday, and you can do 2 meetings a day, and it will drop into your calendar 30-minute conversations where you get to meet people and have an interesting conversations. Now, if you do this, I highly recommend that you go into it with a mindset is, how can I help this person on this call? How can I help them clang a bell on social media or make some introductions? Because what's happening by being a giver, you are creating the sense of goodwill. And by creating a good sense of goodwill is that people do business with people. People like people who are willing to help and support problems with them. So Kathryn has volunteered her time and her team's time to come and talk to you. Now, there is no real benefit for her apart from, yes, she's sort of inspiring the next generation, but she's doing that because her mentality as an agency owner is to know that if you put good energy out into the world, it builds that it will always come back to you. The rewards will always come back to you. It might not be immediate right now, but it will happen in a good state. So I'd always encourage you to give more than you take, and always, always, always build that spirit of reciprocity. And in that, guys, one thing that I would encourage you all to do is that Kathryn and her team have taken the most extraordinary step to help you all accelerate in your careers. She has provided her SEO and content course that she mentioned on this call for you on our Mighty Networks network. Now, we've had two people who've actually, I know some of you signed up at the beginning when we were setting it all up, but in order to take part in this, I need you to sign in again. So when you go into the Mighty Networks, I'd show you online, but I can't show it to you right now. Go into the course and sign up. Now, there's a small fee on this. I'm sorry about that. It says $46, which is about £35. It equates to £3.50 per week for 10 weeks. Now, I'm going to put this in perspective. The course that Kathryn does is normally sold for £1,600. So, and the reason why we're trying to raise a bit of money is that we want to basically send Kathryn and her team a present, and we also have to pay a little bit of a fee for the platform, but we're not even covering costs on this. But at the moment, if you've signed up before, apart from the 2 people who have genuinely signed up in our course membership, so Ella Povey and Ashley Hours, thank you very much. We'll open the course up to you on Monday, and we're going to start going through the whole thing. Everyone else, I'd encourage you to sign up and then send me your terms and conditions. I've got yours, Ashley. Thank you for that. And we're going to start. Now, if the rest of you don't want to come be part of it, that's fine. But I'm telling you, these guys are going to get the jump on you in terms of accelerating their careers, because SEO and content writing is in hot demand right now. And if you're a creative and you think, well, copywriting is not for me, that's bollocks. You need to understand that creativity is words and images. So get your skills in this and your data analytics skills sharp. So we're going to start this, whether you're on board or not, from Monday. And so anybody who tried to sign up before we kind of set it up properly, I'm sorry, please do so again. But we are starting properly on Monday, and it's going to create a huge amount of value for you. I'd really encourage that. So the final thing I just want to wrap up. I'm going to hand back over to Kathryn and her team, because she might want to say a little bit more about the content piece. But this year, 2021, it feels challenging, right? But look at this network. Look at the amazing, talented people we've connected with who can help each other out. And kindness spreads. So help and support each other. Share stuff on the Mighty Networks, things that you might do, and be proactive. If you stay passive, I'm telling you what, there are people in this network who've been proactive and have gone the extra mile. They stand out a mile, right? So listen to everything that Kathryn has said, but the one takeout I would say to you is you need to have an abundancy mindset. There's not a scarcity mindset. There is plenty of opportunities for everyone in this, and build the bridges of reciprocities, because it will come back to you in spades and it will massively help your career. So I'm going to hand over to Kathryn for the final word.
Yeah, thank you, Richard. Yeah, I just wanted to add that this course was designed as a recruitment pipeline. I designed it when we hired Stuart, and Jess went through it, and that's how Jess actually ended up becoming the third copywriter at Coffee House. She went through this course. So it is a really valuable course. Yeah, and if anybody has any questions about the course or about applying for a creative role in general, please feel free to drop me an email. I'm more than happy to answer, or drop Richard an email and he can forward it along to me, because he does have my email address. So yeah, I mean, I hope that you all take advantage of the course. It's a good thing to add to your CV. You get a little certificate at the end, so you can add it to your LinkedIn profile. You know, when you go for a job, it's a great thing to be able to talk about. It shows that you're proactive. It shows that you want to learn, which is something that most employers want. So yeah, I would highly recommend taking advantage of it. Yeah, and thanks everyone for having us. Thanks for having me and my team. I hope that you guys learned a lot today about how you might apply and successfully apply for your next role. And I hope that it does help, and it helps you get into, you know, your first role.
We're going to wrap up formally now, but if anyone wants to stick around because they've got a question for me and Dan, that's a burning question, you're more than welcome to. We'll probably stay just for no more than like 4 minutes. The other thing to just mention is this Friday, 6 o'clock, it's our social. It's going to be just a chat, bring a drink. We can catch up properly all then. Please, please, please remember, you have to sign up through the Eventbrite link. Otherwise, you won't get sent the Zoom call details. So the RSVP on the Winchester Creatives community platform just gives an indication of numbers, but it doesn't allow us to send you the Zoom link. So I hope you can join there. And then the next event we're doing, the wonderful Sabrina Chevanez from Complex Creative is talking about strength and diversity. She's talking about how she's overcome discrimination, both in gender and race, to build a brilliant agency, and how you can overcome your inner fears and your inner demons, your imposter syndrome, to get some really good practical things. So it's a really inspiring talk. I really encourage you to do that. That's going to be on the 21st of January. And the next one after that, we've got the wonderful Steve Richards and Ryan O'Keefe over from Jago, going to be talking about the importance of personal branding, which is going to be an outstanding talk. So we've got some great.
Can I come to that one? They're really good. Yeah,
you're part of the gang, Kathryn.
For anybody who doesn't know, Django is like top notch when it comes to personal branding. Yeah, Spencer raves about them all the time. Spencer Gallagher, if you haven't read the book, Agencynomics, amazing book, my favorite book in the whole entire world. It's all about running an agency, and a lot of what Richard and I have talked about today in terms of building reciprocity, you know, doing favors, being a helper, all of those things comes from this book. Yeah, so if you haven't read it and you want to know about running an agency, definitely read that, and definitely go to that talk. I really want to go to that talk.
Well, the only other thing to mention is that, sorry, we're slightly delayed in getting back and communicating around the apprenticeships. I mean, lockdown and just the craziness of the last three weeks, just please bear with us. We will be reaching out. We have a couple of apprentices in mind. We're going to be starting on the Yellowtail brief. We didn't raise as much finance as we wanted to at the end of last year, but we have got more funding on the way. So our plan is to kickstart with a really tight team, but we're going to make sure that we have touch points with everyone so they can feel like they're involved, they can see the process, we can share work in progress. So we hope to be in a position to be able to communicate something to you all early next week. But in the meantime, you have these events, you have the online community and the course, this amazing 10 weeks course, which can be done whenever you want to do it online. I highly recommend you sign up to that because that will really help fast track and accelerate your career. So Dan, is there anything else you want to say?
There's nothing else I wanted to say other than just to echo the messages in the chat window right now. Just a massive thank you from all of us at Winchester Creatives for just giving up your time and your advice and answering each and every question that has been thrown at you this evening, because I for one have found it hugely enjoyable and insightful, and I know that everyone else will have done as well. So again, a huge and massive thank you to Kathryn and everyone from Copyhouse. Thank you so much.
Just one favor, can I promised Dan that I'd take a photograph of everyone before everyone left, and if we could do one of those cheesy ones of waving or looking happy, that really helps me, because then we can do a post. Okay, and Rishab and anyone else, Eloise, hey, can you turn on your cameras? Okay, we're going to do this in 5, 4. Flo, if you're there, 3, 2, 1. Great. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Amazing.
See you Friday for our social.
And as Richard said, we're hanging around for a few minutes if anyone's got any questions.
Thanks, Kathryn and the guys. Thank you, Copyhouse. You're legend.
Thanks for having us.